Got our family here.
Yeah.
Fun times. Spearhead family chat. It's like a fireside chat. That's what I love about this, because it's chill, it's intimate. It's just our crew talking about our stories and all the crazy stuff that happens to Jonathan all over the nations. You know.
Now we have Jonathan and Steven have crazy stuff happen.
Oh, dude. It's never going to stop. And it's so fun to give
Bring
them a
it
hard
on.
time about it. Yeah.
Come on.
Well,
It's all about the adventure.
and of course, we have Mom on today. This is my mom. And we love her and having her on. Mom leads the prayer team for Spearhead Missions. And that is, if you don't know much about prayer, well, we'll get into that in another episode. But that is going to be a whole episode in of itself. Prayer is not just like, thank you, Lord, for this food. Amen. You get a little bit deeper than that when you're praying for people all over the world. Mom, I really wanted to hear your not that I haven't heard it 100 times, but I love it. I want to hear your testimony. Of course, I'm kind of interwoven in there myself. Part of it's, some of my story too. But I would love to hear it. Like, just tell me the story. Tell me about Dad. Tell me about, just our whole history, where this thing came from. You would learn a little bit more about me, from the story and kind of where I started,
Little baby Kelly.
Little baby Kelly, that's right. I mean, arguably the most good or bad, in general, in my case, good. The most influential people in our lives are our parents, especially in your formative years and all that. And so this is part of that piece for me in a lot of ways, the essence of where a lot of things birthed for me in my heart. So, but tell me, Mom, just jump into it where you want to and start telling me the story.
Well, to start with, I grew up in an evangelistic home. I had parents that were very evangelistic. My mother won a lot of my friends to the Lord. And, just going into feed stores and all of that. My dad had a shared interest with another man with the farm.
Do me a favor, slide that mic to you just a little closer. Okay. Yeah.
A little ways out of Houston, and hanging on his belt loop, going into those places, he would witness to all the guys, in the feed stores and in Western stores and around rodeo arenas. And so I just grew up with that. And so I had that on the inside of me. I can't remember a time not thinking about when I would meet somebody, if they really knew the Lord or not. That would just always go in my brain. I wonder if they're saved. I wonder if they really know Jesus, even as a child.
Even like back in the rodeo days?
Yes.
And
well, even
that.
as a child, I would always think, I wonder if they know Jesus. It just would always be in my mind, because it was all around me, everywhere. And so that was my background. And then I met a man named Sonny Lachey. He was a rodeo clown, a bullfighter, and very well known around rodeos. And long story short, we ended up getting married August 27th of 1974.
Wow.
And so with that, I had asked him before we got married if he knew the Lord. And he said that when he was a young boy, there was a family that took him to church all the time. And that he had.
Hey guys, we're going to get you right back to that episode. But if you want to know when new content drops, like this podcast, then you should
subscribe
right now.
Given his heart to the Lord. He was not discipled. He didn't grow up in church. He had parents that really actually were very much opposed to this family taking him to church. And so, of course, he didn't have enough of that discipleship in his life. So he was the craziest, wildest, funniest human being you'll ever want to know. And everybody knew him. And
okay, just like one or two stories to
right
describe
there.
that. Just to just give us two.
Now we could go a long way on that.
I know.
But
for context here.
Yeah, and so in the course of our marriage, he told me that he wasn't very happy. And so, eventually he told me he wanted a divorce, which broke my heart. And prior to that, my mother had passed away when I was 18 years of age. She was my best friend. And so here I was, in this marriage, and someone's telling me, that they don't want to be married anymore. So that broke my heart. And but over the course of time, Sonny came to the realization that that the reason why he wasn't happy is because he really wasn't giving his life to Jesus. Not really.
And now listen, because you're about to dive in deep on us there, and I want to hear every ounce of that.
Okay.
But I want them to have some good context. Like you've given us like an overview, but like
tell us how crazy
like
Sonny was.
Sonny. This is mid 70s, right?
Oh yeah.
So this is like cowboys and let's say hippies were like that.
Oh, for sure.
What do you know about
for
that?
sure.
You know about that cowboy thing, country boy,
we
farm
can go
boy?
deep there.
You know,
because
Jonathan was a farm boy.
Yeah.
You know, he worked in cattle ranches. Like,
I know.
You know that.
Yeah.
How about So
Yeah. Okay. So when I met Sonny, he had just every color of hair you can imagine. It was plaited together, and it went over his rearview mirror. So the first time I ever slid into that truck, I said, "What is that?" And he said, "Well, that's some of the guys the hippies that I would take down. I'd cut their hair off." And I went, I have long hair. So I'm like, I don't know what I just climbed in the truck with, but
they would hitchhike. It's hippies hitchhiking across America.
Yeah.
And Crazy Sonny would see a hitchhiker and be like, "Oh yeah." So he'd pull over, they'd hop in the car,
yeah,
and he would scalp them.
yeah.
I mean, not their
Not
head,
full
but their
scalp.
ponytails. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
these were like trophies, hippie
They
trophies.
were trophies for him. And then, of course, he chewed tobacco. And so he had a spittoon full of that. And so when he saw the hippies walking down the side of the road, he'd pick up that, he'd go, "Watch this." And then he would hurl that spittoon, at him. And it was just like, spit. So that's what we got into. And so anyway, but over time.
What about the guy? Though? Do you have something?
No, you go.
What about the guy? Because I feel like this might come full circle. What about the guy that he'd stolen a bunch of gear from him?
Okay.
You got to tell that story.
Well, now this is, Sonny was training a lot of young guys to bull ride. He had a mechanical bull that he had rented, and he had like a school to teach him how to ride bulls. And during that same period, Sonny had a lot of his bull rigging and all of that stolen. It was like in a duffel bag behind the chutes. And he put word out that to these guys, these young guys, he said that somebody stole my stuff. And he said, I'm going to tell you right now, he said that if I find out who did it, or if I find out who knew who did it, and they didn't tell me, he said, I'm after them.
Mm-hmm.
And so they said, "Sonny, I know who did it, but I didn't do it. I didn't do it. And so they told him, and this was pre-salvation, okay? But he took him outside of that Circle 8 rodeo and Aldine rodeo, that covered arena, and he beat that guy so bad. And of course, I was just like, I can't believe he's doing this to him. I mean, literally, he almost killed him, and that's a fact.
So you're sitting there watching him do that?
Well, yeah.
Wow.
And so I just couldn't believe that he, And so, anyway.
That's some good context.
Yeah,
I mean,
that'll
for
give you the backdrop.
where he was. Yeah.
That he was a leader.
Yeah.
He was a leader. Everybody looked up to him because he was who he was. Yeah. He wasn't afraid of anything. I mean, he was a rodeo clown, so he would go running at a bull, put his hands on top of the horns, and flip all the way over.
Wow.
Which was part of an act that he did as a clown. And
wild.
So he had broken his neck 3 times in 5 different places.
Wow.
And
in the course of how many years? Well,
from the time I knew him, 74, till when he got saved, for 2 years. I mean, one of them was pre-me. It was before.
Yeah.
What's that show that we like to watch? Hometown?
Yeah.
Where's that?
Laurel, Mississippi.
So every time that comes up, you say,
I think about
I know
that
Laurel.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yes, now that's later.
Okay.
So we want to get into the after.
Okay.
Jesus
She always talks about living in Laurel for however many days because he was on traction in the hospital a month.
My horse was tied to a trailer in the parking lot of a hospital there because he
Yeah,
came off the
broken
Saddlebrock horse on his neck and broke a C1 and a C2 and was in traction. And we were supposed to get married in not even a month. So I had to handwrite over 300 notes to 300 wedding guests that due to his accident, we had to postpone our wedding.
Oh, my God.
But then didn't you get married when he had a neck brace on?
Oh, yeah. He was still recovering.
All
And
the
most
wedding pictures have him in a neck brace.
That's what I
And
thought.
most of his buddies were either on crutches or taped up. And so, you know, my mother's side of the family, different side of the family, they said, "What did these guys do? What happened to these guys? Where did you find these
They're in the
guys?"
mafia or what?
And, you know, and then they wanted to wear their, well, it's a whole other story. Wanted to wear their boots, and we had these, you know, these tuxedos. And so we had that discussion. I went, you know, you can't wear those crappy boots, those boots with all that crap on your shoes. This is a wedding, you know. It was just, you know, a lot of funny stories mingled into that. But,
Well,
yeah.
well, all right. So fast forward to where you were. He comes to a
Okay.
place where he's miserable.
Yeah,
and he
he's
knows.
miserable, and he thinks it's because, and you know. So anyway, he thinks it's because he's not, you know, writing as well as he once did. It's just all this stuff that he's trying to name it. And so we were separated, and I moved into an efficiency apartment, and I, you know, weighed about 100 pounds. It was just, you know, just very heartbreaking because my mother going to heaven when I was 18, and then, you know, that it was just like everything I ever really loved,
Mm.
you know, I was losing.
Mm.
And so that was a very hard time. But I got down on my face, literally, before the Lord. And I said, God, if you restore the joy of my salvation, if you bring me back to that place I once was in you, I will never let myself get this way again. And my aunt had given me an album of a man's testimony of his salvation. And this guy had been a part of a 50s type gang that was giving his testimony on this album. So it's very old school,
Remember the name
but
of the
very
guy?
real.
What was
Freddie
it?
Gage.
Freddie Gage.
And he led a big gang in the.
I have that record. You know, I found it online.
That's
I found it on like eBay,
Yeah.
and I have the record of him preaching the gospel on
In
that
that
on that
church.
giant record.
Yeah,
That same
that's
one
it.
that you're about to tell the story of.
Well, my aunt had given me this record album, and she said, you know, it sounds so much like Sonny's life. And she said, I think maybe if you let him listen to this, that it would really help him. And so I said, well, if I see him, you know, okay. So he came out looking for me one night. We'd both been at a rodeo separately, Symington Rodeo. And so he came looking for where I lived. And I had my best friend, Peggy, said, don't you tell him where I'm living. I can't take it anymore. And so he found me. And I didn't even know I had a mailbox. I was so, you know, young back then, stupid. I didn't know I had a mailbox in the apartment. Anyway, he found my name on the mailbox and located, you know, the door. And he knocked on the door, and I went to the door. And the first thing he said is, and I'm just going to shut the door. And he put his hand up like that. He said, wait just a minute. He said, if you'll just go back with me and give me one more chance. He said, I'll live every day for the Lord till the day I die. I said, what? I said, well, come in. So he came in, and I said, I've been given this album, and I said, I want you to hear it. And he said, okay, so I'll hear it. Now, I'd never seen Sonny cry. Cowboys don't do that, right? But he was very tender-hearted, really.
Here at Spearhead Missions, we are taking the gospel to the most unreached places on earth.
Did you know that 3.4 billion people have never heard the gospel of Jesus Christ? Yep, I said it. 3.4 billion.
Maybe you've seen the masses coming to Jesus in one of our events and you want to be a part. Well, now you can.
The Bible says all who call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. But how can they hear without a preacher? And how can that preacher go unless he is sent? When you send us with your finances, you share in the rewards of all those souls being saved. Whether it's one of our mass evangelism events near the Middle East, our hundreds of churches in Asia, or one of our international Bible schools, you will be investing in something that lasts forever.
Why should someone get to hear the gospel over and over when there's billions who have not heard the gospel of Jesus Christ one time?
Partner with us today by clicking on the link in the descriptions or going to spearheadmissions.com.
He was very tender-hearted. He never went to see anybody that he didn't bring him something. I mean, if it was food he saw being sold on the side of a road of fruit.
I bet I know what you're thinking about right now. That shirt. Remember that shirt? I'll tell it. This is the way I remember it. Dad comes home one night from somewhere, working, whatever he's doing. He doesn't have a shirt on. And comes in the house, and Mom says, "Sonny, where's your shirt?" And I said, "Well, I found the guy on the corner who didn't have a shirt." She's like, "So you gave him your shirt?" He's like, "Well, yeah." Like, didn't even think about it. This guy needs a shirt. Take your shirt off. Give the guy your shirt. Like, where are those guys? Yeah. Where are those people? Where's that happening anymore? But just the heart. I mean, that's just.
And he put him up in a room because the guy had told him that he was going to go try to get a job, and he had an appointment to try to get a job. And so he got him something to eat and put him up in a room. And so that was him on the inside. And so he sits there, and I turn the record album on, and this guy begins to unfold his whole story. And at the end of it, he says that he walks into a church, and he's sitting in the back. This is Freddie Gage. And an invitation is given for those that don't know Jesus. They don't know if they're going to go to heaven or not, to surrender their heart and life to Jesus Christ. And he said he tells the story that he's sitting there, he's standing there in this seat in this church. And he says, "God, I can't give my life to you. I can't live up to it. I'll never live up to it. I'll never be able to do it." But he said the Lord just wouldn't leave him alone. And so this man finally steps out in the aisle, and he surrenders his heart and life to Jesus Christ. And of course, the story goes, he goes back out into the streets, and he wins all these guys to the Lord. Mm-hmm. And he grew up on the north side, just like Sonny had. And so Sonny began to break down and cry because he had quite a reputation. And for him to walk out of that world and to give his life to the Lord, he wasn't going to be the party boy and the fun boy that everybody loved. The party didn't start till he got there. So he was having to let go of a lot of identity in that. Mm. And so he said, if I'll go to church in the morning, he said, "Will you go with me?" I said, "Any church in the city of Houston?" And he said, "Okay." And so he leaves. And what I didn't know at the time is that he went out to Circle 8 Rodeo in Aldine, and he starts gathering all these guys together, and he tells them, "Meet me at Denny's on 610 at such and such hour." And so then he calls me and tells me, he said, where are your boots? Where are your jeans? And of course, now this is a long time ago. You don't wear that kind of stuff to church, I mean, you look like you were dressed for a blizzard. In a Baptist church, you look like you were dressed for a blizzard if you were going to a picnic. So here we are. And, he's telling me to wear that stuff. And I said, "Oh, well, okay, So, got dressed. He picked me up, and we went down to the Denny's. And he still hadn't told me anything about these guys. And we walk into that Denny's, and all I can see is cowboy hats and smoke going up in that corner over there. And I'm like...
When you could smoke inside a Denny's.
And I said, "Who are these guys?" He said, well, and his family was from Louisiana, so he had a lot of that Cajun stuff in him. And he said, well, these guys don't know it yet, but they're fitting to go to church. Fitting. Yeah. I said, this ought to be good. So we went in, we ate, we got ready to go. And so we walked outside into the parking lot, and these guys, he said, "Y'all follow me." And they're, putting their cigarettes back in their pockets, or getting in the car, and they're following him. And I'm still not knowing what's going on because he hadn't really, told me. And so, but these guys think that they're going to go to, no telling what they thought. They could have thought he was going to start partying that morning someplace and not stop for 2 days.
They're just following.
Yeah. And so, but they followed him because they would, people do that. They'd follow him anywhere. So we pulled up in the church parking lot of the church that I had grown up in. And these guys are getting out of the trucks, and they all look like they slept in their clothes. And cowboy by the name of Larry Calvert looked up, and he saw the church, and he said, "Leisha, you checking us in there?" He said, "Well, I know I didn't tell you yet." He said, "But all I can tell you is it would mean a lot to me if you would stay." And so 15 cowboys piled into that church and filled up 3 pews And I hadn't been there in so long. I didn't know the pastor. But he got up and he preaches only one way to have true satisfaction and joy and peace in your life. And that's if you surrender your life to Jesus Christ. And so at the end of that service, Sonny stepped out in that aisle in front of all those cowboys and gave his heart to the Lord. My dad met him down at the front, my brother, and it was just, tears of joy. We ended up opening up our apartment and had Bible studies in that apartment, and these guys came. And our pastor, because, the cowboy world's culture, and if you're not in that culture, I've told some of them since then, I said, well, there's going to be more people in heaven than just you cowboys, okay? I'm just going to warn you. But they don't think that way. If you're not a cowboy, you ain't nothing, And that's just how tight their world is. And I haven't been around it that tight in a while, but I'm sure it hadn't changed much. So anyway, we opened up our apartment because they still weren't too down with going to a church building. So our pastor came and he would, just begin to do Bible studies. Wow. And they started coming. And then one time after that, when he was training some young guys how to bull ride, we have a picture somewhere of all these guys up in the stands beside a rodeo arena. And before he would even begin training them how to ride that bull, that mechanical bull, he would preach and tell them about Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And he ended up leading every single one of those guys to the Lord that came in that original group, and then those that would come to their sides of those arenas to learn how to ride.
Mm-mm.
And
he went on to start, like now they're more popular when you hear about cowboy churches.
Oh, there was no cowboy church.
That didn't exist. He started some of the first cowboy churches that existed on Sundays at rodeos when they were on the rodeo circuit.
Yeah, there was you could not find it like Lone Star. That's why my heart goes out so much to that work there, because that guy knows how to reach those guys. He has an arena built in front of that place. So that was the beginning, and we were at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo sometime later. This is after he has surrendered his life to the Lord and had begun to develop, some spiritually. And we were up there where a lot of the cowboys would stand, the real cowboys that actually participated in the Astrodome rodeo at the time. And so a guy caught Sonny's eye, and he said, wait a minute. And he took off running. This guy saw him. And the guy started running to get away from him. And Sonny ran and caught him. And this was the guy that he had beat senseless on the side of that arena.
Oh, here's the part we left out.
Yeah.
Because earlier in that story, the thing that he told that guy was...
What Sonny had told the guy.
Sonny told the guy
That's
was,
true.
And every single time I see you, I'm going to do this all
Same
over again.
Thing again to you.
So when their eyes met, this guy was, I'm out.
Yeah. So that's why he took off running, because he thought, I'm getting it again.
Yep.
So, but when Sonny stopped him, he said, I just want to tell you. He said that I'm so sorry for what I did to you. And he said that I've given my life to the Lord Jesus Christ. He said, man, I heard you got religion, but I wouldn't take any chances.
I heard you got religion, but I wasn't taking any chances. Wow.
So there are a million stories about Sonny Leger. He lived a million years in the 34 years he was here.
Wow.
It just seemed like he had so many stories.
That's
and made a big dent to the kingdom of darkness.
And as you alluded to there, in his 34 years, what year was it when he passed away?
1983, January 8th.
Of 1983. So,
no, I'm sorry. Is that right? Yes.
Yeah.
1983.
83.
You were 4.
That sounds right. I was 4. That's right. He had a small family plane, little Cessna, little 4-seater. He'd use it to go to rodeo, things like that. It had mechanical problems ultimately, and it crashed, and he died in that plane crash. And
Baby Kelly was 4
when
years
baby
old.
Kelly was 4 years old. That's right. And so that's kind of really a transition, of course, in your life and everyone's life.
Yeah.
Hey guys, awesome podcast happening right now. Hope you're being blessed by it. Just wanted to remind you to subscribe. We have content dropping all the time from all over the world, and we want you to be alerted when that stuff comes out. So be sure that you subscribe. And really what happened. on that day. But tell me the aftermath of that and what happened after that event. What did that lead to?
Well, first of all, I met with a man that was going to preach that funeral. And I told him, I said, I just want to tell you that there's going to be guys coming in from all over the place. I said, and they're not coming to hear you preach. They're coming to pay their last respects to a buddy. That's the way they're going to see this. I said, but when they get there, I want you to blow the doors off this church, because that may be the last time they ever hear the gospel, and Sonny has witnessed to these guys. He said, I'll do that. And he did. There was guys calling the church saying, I want what he had. I had a guy that came by my house, and he said, I know I didn't come around very much, after Sonny got religion. They all called it that. And the religion can't do what's happened to this guy.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, he came by the house and he sat across the kitchen table. He said, I'm sorry it's taken me so long to come by and see you. But he said that I knew that Sonny had something that I needed. And he said, I ran from it. I didn't come by because I knew that what he had was real. And
I remember a specific thing that he said.
Yeah. Yes, there is a specific
and he
thing
said, I remember what it is. He says,
okay.
Sonny took all my excuses away.
That's right.
He said, that's right. He did say that. He said, the reason why I didn't come by, he said, because I knew that what Sonny had was real. And he said, he took all of my excuses away, because I always had them lined up of all the reasons why I would never surrender all of my life to the Lord. And from that point, I thought, God, make me somebody that takes every excuse away from anybody for not saying they can live for the Lord. And so that was powerful. And but the impact of all of that, the impact of seeing people go home to be with the Lord at such a young age, absolutely, it impacted me in a great way, a heavy way. Because though I knew that everybody died and they went someplace, it was such a reality for me that my mother was actually very much alive. She wasn't here anymore, but she was very much alive. And Sonny was very much alive. He wasn't here, but he's very much alive right now. And so the impact of that was just like right in my face. And so, sure, when people go, there is that season, and I think it's okay, and I think we have to acknowledge that, because you're not sad as a born again believer that's on fire for God that they've left this earth. My God, don't we all want to be there?
Right.
What grieves you is that, or can be tempted to grieve you, is the fact you miss them. I couldn't call my mom anymore. We went shopping and out to eat every Thursday night, got ready for the weekend for the dates and things I was going to do. She was my best friend. My friends, they would call the house, and if I wasn't there and they got her on the phone, they'd spend hours on the phone with her. They loved my mom. I mean, they didn't care. I mean, I'm me, but her. And she loved them, and she loved the kids, and so, missing having not just a mom, but my mom as a friend, she was with me through everything. And so, and then having, a husband go to be with the Lord, and, and that you can't see them anymore. They're not there. And so that's the part, this kind of, the challenge. You go into a grocery store after the funeral's over and everything's over, and you see people, they're going about their life. They're doing everything like they always did it. And for you, your whole world has changed, and that reality of stepping into normal things and it being different for you. And it just seems like everything's going along just the way it always has for everybody else. So there is that period of time when someone makes that transition to heaven. But the good thing about it is that I did not sit and grieve, like as in, you see some people do, because the reality of eternity was more real to me than the miss of either one of them. And
listen, I have to interject this here, because this is a good part. And I think there's so much goodness here, what you're about to step into. Yeah. We're just going to roll right into a part 2 here on talk about eternity, because that's what you're getting at here. But I'll just say this. I remember as a 4-year-old, you know how you have glimpses as a child? There's glimpses, flashes. One of my glimpses was me and Mom, her holding me. I think it was you, or maybe Linda was holding me, my cousin Lindy, I think it was, one of y'all. And we walk into the funeral home where the casket is. I can remember my dad laying in that casket with his red plaid shirt that he always wore. It was like this one shirt. And I remember looking over in the casket. I don't remember this, actually. My cousin Linda reminded me that I said this.
That's right.
And I looked over in the casket, and she said that I said, my little 4-year-old spirit said, that's not my daddy. My little 4-year-old spirit knew that we were not the sum total of what you see on the outside.
Right.
That we define ourselves too often as a body who possesses a spirit when it's the opposite. We are spirits who possess bodies. Spirits first, the eternal first, the forever first, the temporal second. This will come and this will go. But eternity will go on and on and on and on. So I remember, now this part I do remember, coming back from that funeral home, and you couldn't find me because I was a rascally kid. I'm climbing roofs of houses. I'm up trees. I definitely had my dad's DNA. I was just wild. That's where I, So she, came out of the house, couldn't find me. I wasn't on the roof, wasn't in a tree, whatever. She finally found me, and correct me if I'm wrong here, found me at the end of the street where I had been knocking on doors, going door to door, knocking on the door. Because all I knew, all that she told me, she told everybody at that funeral home we went there, when we go there, I don't want to see one tear. I don't want to see one sad face, because I've told Kelly that his daddy went home to be with Jesus. He is in heaven, and that is a good thing. So everybody kept it together so I could, see him. So I'm thinking this is a great thing. So I'm knocking on all the doors. And what am I telling everybody? Guess what? My daddy went to live with Jesus in heaven. I'm knocking on doors, door to door. I'm sure there wasn't a dry eye on the block. Everybody's like, what? You're telling us your dad died? But I was excited. I'm like, I'm already a little baby evangelist, knocking on doors, telling everybody about Jesus. But that's enters the effect of that, what that impact had on our lives, at that point. And it sprungboard our whole family into another realm for the next number of years.